For 6 years, she loved a man who treated her like a ghost in her own home. She cleaned his office, answered his calls, and endured his silence. But the day she signed those divorce papers, everything changed. He didn't just lose a wife, he lost the one person holding his entire world together. Jasmine Carter had forgotten what it felt like to be seen, not glanced at, not looked through, but truly seen, the way people look at something precious, something worth protecting. She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment Andrew stopped looking at her that way, or if he ever had. Maybe it was somewhere between the wedding vows and the morning she woke up alone in their king-size bed for the 100th time, his side cold and untouched. Maybe it was when she traded her dreams of opening her own consulting firm for a temporary position as his executive assistant, a temporary that had stretched into 6 long years. Their Manhattan penthouse was beautiful in the way museums are beautiful, expensive, untouchable, cold. Jasmine moved through it like a curator, maintaining its perfection while leaving no trace of herself behind. The minimalist decor was all Andrew's choice, all whites and grays and sharp angles. There were no photos of their wedding, no splashes of color, nothing warm, just like their marriage. Every morning, Jasmine woke at 5:30. She prepared Andrew's coffee exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, splash of cream, served at precisely 182 degrees. She laid out his suit, reviewed his schedule, and sent reminders to his phone about meetings he'd otherwise forget. By the time he emerged from his home office at 7, she'd already handled a dozen emails, rescheduled 2 conference calls, and smoothed over a client complaint. He'd grab his coffee without a word, eyes already glued to his phone, and leave for the office. Some mornings she wondered if he even remembered she existed. At Bennett Properties, things weren't much better. Jasmine's official title was executive assistant, but she functioned as a COO without the recognition or salary. She managed Andrew's entire operation, negotiating with contractors, analyzing market trends, vetting investment opportunities, even drafting contracts that his lawyers would later stamp with approval. When a deal went well, Andrew took the credit in board meetings, his confidence radiating as he presented strategies Jasmine had stayed up until 3 in the morning perfecting. When things went wrong, he'd appear at her desk with a cold stare and a single word: "Fix it." She always did. The Bennett family gatherings were their own special kind of torture. Catherine Bennett, Andrew's mother, had never approved of her son marrying a black woman, and she made sure Jasmine knew it with every perfectly practiced microaggression. At Sunday brunches in the Bennett estate in Connecticut, Catherine would ask Jasmine to help the staff in the kitchen, then act surprised when Jasmine reminded her she was family, not help. She'd touch Jasmine's natural curls with a wrinkled nose and say things like, "Have you considered straightening it? It's so much more professional." She'd bring up Andrew's ex-girlfriend, blonde and blue-eyed, wonder aloud what happened to her, and sigh wistfully about what could have been. Andrew never defended her. He'd simply cut another piece of his steak, chew slowly, and change the subject to business. His silence hurt more than his mother's words ever could. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October, 6 years and 2 months into their marriage. Jasmine had just closed a $15 million deal with a hotel developer, 3 months of negotiations, site visits, financial projections, all of it orchestrated by her while Andrew golfed with clients and attended galas. When the contract was signed, Andrew called a company-wide meeting to celebrate his success. He stood at the head of the conference room, accepting congratulations and handshakes, while Jasmine sat in the back, invisible as always. That evening, there was a celebration at an upscale restaurant. Jasmine wore an emerald dress that made her skin glow, her hair swept into an elegant updo. She'd hoped foolishly that maybe tonight Andrew would acknowledge her, introduce her as his partner in more than just the legal sense. Instead, when a business associate approached their table and gestured to Jasmine, asking, "And who's this lovely lady?" "New hire?" Andrew had simply said, "That's Jasmine. She handles my schedule, not my wife, not my partner, just the woman who handles his schedule." Jasmine excused herself to the bathroom and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked tired, Decades older than 32, she didn't recognize the woman staring back, this diminished, invisible version of herself. When had she become so small? She returned to the table just in time to hear Andrew on his phone in the restaurant's hallway, speaking to someone. His lawyer, she realized. The prenup is solid, he was saying, voice low but not low enough. She signed it before the wedding. She knew what this was. If she ever tried to leave, she'd get nothing, not a penny of what I've built. What I've built, not what we've built, just him. Jasmine didn't confront him. She didn't cry or make a scene. She simply went home, opened her laptop, and started making copies of files, emails, contracts with her signature on the negotiation threads, client testimonials praising her specifically, meetings she'd run, deals she'd closed. 6 years of evidence that Andrew Bennett's empire was built on her invisible labor. The next morning, she called a lawyer. It took 3 weeks to plan her exit, 3 weeks of pretending everything was normal while she systematically organized the evidence of her contribution to Bennett Properties. 3 weeks of watching Andrew ignore her at breakfast, dismiss her ideas in meetings, and treat her like expensive furniture. 3 weeks of Catherine's barbs and Andrew's silence and her own reflection growing stronger, more determined. On a Friday evening in November, Jasmine walked into Andrew's home office with a manila envelope. He was on his computer, analyzing some report, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. She placed the envelope on his desk. "What's this?" he asked without looking up. "Divorce papers." That got his attention. His eyes snapped to hers, confusion flickering across his face. Not hurt, not sadness, just confusion, like she'd presented him with an equation that didn't make sense. "You're joking." "I'm not. I've already signed them. Your copy is inside." Andrew opened the envelope, scanned the first page, then set it down with a casual shrug. "Fine. My lawyer will contact yours. We'll handle it cleanly." No, why? No, can we talk about this? No, please don't go. Just logistics. Just business. "That's it?" Jasmine heard herself ask. 6 years of marriage and that's all you have to say? Andrew leaned back in his chair, looking at her like she was a client making unreasonable demands. "What did you expect, Jasmine? You want me to beg?" "We both know this hasn't been working for a while. You'll be fine. You're smart. You'll land on your feet." "You don't even know me," she said quietly. "You never did." She left that night with 2 suitcases and a heart that felt simultaneously shattered and liberated. She stayed in a cheap hotel in Brooklyn, crying herself to sleep on scratchy sheets while Manhattan glittered across the river, cold and distant. By Monday morning, Andrew's world began to crack. His new temporary assistant, a nervous young man fresh out of college, forgot to confirm a meeting with his biggest investor. The investor, furious at being stood up, pulled out of a $20 million development project. Andrew's accountant called in a panic because files were missing, spreadsheets weren't updated, and nobody knew where anything was. Client emails went unanswered. A crucial permit application missed its deadline because nobody had followed up with the city. By Wednesday, Andrew had screamed at 4 different employees and fired the temporary assistant. "Where's Jasmine?" his CFO finally asked during an emergency meeting, and the room went silent. Andrew tried calling her. She didn't answer. He tried emailing. Nothing. He even drove to the penthouse thinking maybe she'd come back, but her keys were on the kitchen counter and her closet was empty. She'd vanished, and with her, the entire infrastructure of his company. Things got worse. A reporter from a business journal had been digging into Bennett Properties' recent successes and discovered something interesting. In nearly every major deal from the past 6 years, there was a common thread. Not Andrew Bennett's name on the negotiation emails, Jasmine Carter's. The journalist reached out to former clients, contractors, investors. The story that emerged was damning. Andrew Bennett was a figurehead. His wife had been the genius behind the empire. When the article dropped, titled "The Invisible Architect: How Jasmine Carter Built Bennett Properties," while her husband took the credit, it went viral within hours. Industry insiders who'd worked with Jasmine began sharing their own stories on social media. Testimonials poured in. Jasmine Carter saved our deal. She was the only competent person at Bennett Properties. Andrew Bennett is nothing without her. Meanwhile, Jasmine was rebuilding. She'd moved into a small but sunlit apartment in Brooklyn with exposed brick and plants in the windows, touches of warmth and life she'd been denied for 6 years. She'd started freelancing as a business consultant, and word spread quickly. One of Andrew's former competitors, a distinguished entrepreneur named Bernard Harrison, reached out personally. "I've been watching you work behind the scenes for years," Harrison told her over coffee. "Andrew Bennett is a fool. I just acquired a struggling property development company, and I need someone brilliant to turn it around. Interested?" Jasmine took the job. Within 3 weeks, she'd identified every problem plaguing Harrison's new acquisition and presented a restructuring plan so comprehensive, so innovative, that Harrison offered her a vice president position with equity on the spot. For the first time in 6 years, someone saw her value. Someone said her name with respect. Andrew's company, meanwhile, was hemorrhaging. Stock prices dropped. Board members demanded answers. Catherine called him daily, screaming about the embarrassment, about how that woman had humiliated their family by leaving and making them look incompetent. The irony wasn't lost on Jasmine when she heard about it through industry gossip. Catherine had spent 6 years treating her like she was worthless, and now she was furious that Jasmine's absence proved her worth. 2 months after Jasmine left, Andrew showed up at her Brooklyn apartment at midnight. She heard the desperate knocking and knew somehow that it was him. When she opened the door, she barely recognized the man standing there. His suit was wrinkled, his hair was uncombed, his eyes were red-rimmed and wild. "I need you," he said, and his voice cracked. "Please come back. The company is falling apart. I'll pay you anything. I'll make you a partner. I'll change. I promise I'll change." Jasmine stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of her apartment, and looked at this man she'd spent 6 years loving. She felt nothing, no satisfaction, no anger, just a quiet, peaceful emptiness where he used to live. "You had 6 years to see me, Andrew," she said softly. 6 years to value me, to defend me, to love me. I begged you without words every single day, but I'm done begging. I'm done being invisible. "Jasmine, please. I hope you find someone who can fix your company, but it won't be me. I'm done fixing things for people who don't appreciate it." She closed the door. She heard him stand there for a long moment before his footsteps retreated down the hall. She didn't cry. She poured herself a cup of tea, curled up on her couch, and felt truly at peace for the first time in years. The divorce hearing was scheduled for March. Andrew's lawyers came prepared with the prenup, confident it would protect his assets. But Jasmine's lawyer had done her homework. She presented 6 years of documentation, emails showing Jasmine's direct involvement in major deals, client testimonials, financial records proving that company revenue increased specifically during periods when Jasmine took the lead on projects. More damning, the lawyer revealed that Andrew had used marital funds, including Jasmine's salary, to acquire 3 properties without her knowledge or consent, which directly violated the terms of the prenup and state marital law. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence with careful attention. When she finally spoke, her voice was sharp. "Mr. Bennett, this court finds that you systematically used your wife's labor, expertise, and even her salary to build wealth while denying her both credit and compensation. The prenuptial agreement is hereby voided due to fraudulent concealment of assets. Mrs. Carter is awarded 40% of all business assets acquired during the marriage, plus $2 million in compensation for unpaid labor." Andrew's face went white. Catherine, sitting behind him, gasped audibly. The judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I'm troubled by the evidence of emotional and financial exploitation in this marriage. Mr. Bennett, you treated your wife like an employee while denying her the respect, compensation, and recognition she deserved. That ends today." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Catherine tried to spin the narrative, giving an interview where she called Jasmine a gold digger who manipulated her son. But the business community wasn't having it. Bernard Harrison held a press conference defending Jasmine's character. Three other CEOs shared their own experiences working with her. Within 48 hours, Catherine was facing a potential defamation lawsuit and was forced to issue a public apology that her lawyer clearly wrote. 1 year later, Jasmine stood on a stage in Chicago accepting a 30 Under 40 award from a major business magazine. She'd launched her own consulting firm, which was already being courted by Fortune 500 companies. Her face graced the cover of 3 magazines. Speaking invitations poured in from around the world. At a business conference that fall, she ran into Andrew. He looked smaller somehow, humbled by the year that had broken him down and forced him to rebuild without her. He approached her cautiously, like someone approaching a flame that had already burned them once. "Congratulations," he said, and for the first time in their entire relationship, he sounded genuine. "You deserve all of this." "Thank you," Jasmine replied, polite but distant. "I'm sorry," Andrew continued, words tumbling out like he'd been practicing them. "For all of it. For not seeing you, for not protecting you, for taking everything you gave and never saying thank you. I was a fool." Jasmine studied his face and saw real regret there. It didn't change anything, but it was something. "I hope you've learned from it," she said simply. Before Andrew could respond, a man approached, tall, kind-eyed, with an easy smile. He placed a gentle hand on Jasmine's back, and she lit up in a way Andrew had never seen. "Ready?" the man asked, and Jasmine nodded. "Andrew, this is Dr. Kenneth Wright. He's an architect. We met at a charity gala last spring." Her smile was genuine, unguarded. "Kenneth, this is Andrew Bennett, my ex-husband." Kenneth shook Andrew's hand politely, but his attention quickly returned to Jasmine, looking at her like she was the most fascinating person in the room, because to him she was. As Jasmine walked away, her hand tucked into Kenneth's arm, laughing at something he whispered, Andrew finally understood what he'd lost. Not the business success, not the efficiency, but her. The woman who'd loved him when he gave her nothing but coldness, who'd built his dreams while her own died quietly, who'd stayed until staying would have destroyed her completely. You can't melt a cold heart by setting yourself on fire to keep it warm. Jasmine had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd also learned something more important. Her value didn't decrease when someone failed to see it. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be and walking away with your head held high. Jasmine spent 6 years being invisible to a man who needed her most. But when she chose herself, she didn't just walk away. She walked into her destiny. Remember, your value doesn't decrease when someone fails to see it. And sometimes the best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be